Zyra, an alien warrior from a technologically superior race, stood at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, gazing down at the planet with a look of disdain. Her species, the Narracan, had conquered entire galaxies, their fleets striking fear into the hearts of countless civilizations. They had perfected their technology and strength to a point where they believed no one could challenge them. Earth, in her eyes, was a primitive, insignificant speck in the vastness of the universe. The humans, with their frail bodies and crude weaponry, were nothing but a curiosity, not even worthy of serious attention. She was part of an elite team sent by the Galactic Council, a body of advanced species that governed the galaxy, to observe humanity. The mission was simple: evaluate Earth's progress and determine if they were a threat. Zyra didn't think that would be a problem. She had heard stories about human bravery and their stubbornness, but she didn't believe for a second that they could match the technological prowess of the Narracan. Zyra's first encounter with humans came when she landed in a remote military base. As she walked among them, she couldn't help but laugh. The soldiers were much smaller than she expected, their faces filled with awe as they watched her towering figure. They seemed so fragile compared to her kind, who could lift ships with their bare hands and survive extreme conditions with ease. Their technology was laughable, no better than the primitive tools of a long-forgotten past. One soldier in particular caught her attention: Captain Alex Carter. He was nothing special in appearance, average in height and build, wearing the same military uniform as the others. But there was something about the way he carried himself that made her curious. As he gave orders to his subordinates, Zyra couldn't help but think how easy it would be to crush him with a single blow. He was no match for her, and the thought made her chuckle under her breath. "You call this training?" she said aloud as she observed a group of soldiers practicing drills. "Your weapons are nothing but toys, and your tactics are as primitive as your kind. You're no better than insects, scurrying around in the dirt." The soldiers paused for a moment, looking uncomfortable at her words, but Alex, to Zyra's surprise, stepped forward. He didn't flinch or back down. Instead, he looked her in the eyes with a sense of quiet confidence. "Don't mistake humanity's size for weakness," he replied, his voice steady. "We've fought harder battles than you can imagine. You'll see that soon enough." Zyra's laugh echoed through the training grounds. "Oh, I'm sure. But I highly doubt you could stand up to a real fight. I've seen the best warriors in the galaxy, and none of them would have any trouble putting you down." Her words were sharp, and she wasn't about to hold back. This was Earth, and she was the Narracan's finest. The humans didn't stand a chance. As she walked away from the soldiers, she overheard Alex muttering to one of his subordinates. "Don't worry. She'll see. We're tougher than she thinks." Zyra dismissed it as nothing more than a foolish remark. Humans had no idea what they were up against. That night, Zyra found herself in a conference room with Earth's military leaders. She sat across from them, her posture tall and proud, watching them intently. They were discussing the potential of humanity joining the Galactic Council. Zyra had been assigned to assess this, but in her mind, it was already clear: Earth wasn't ready for such a prestigious position. The humans were weak, their societies divided, and their technology was nothing compared to the Narracans. She had no doubt they would fall into chaos without the protection of the Council. As the meeting proceeded, Zyra couldn't resist interjecting, her voice laced with condescension. "I fail to see how you expect to be taken seriously in the galaxy. Your planet is riddled with conflict, and your weapons are no more advanced than the ones your ancestors used centuries ago. You are a species in decline." The humans around the table shifted uncomfortably, but again, it was Alex who spoke up. "Maybe you're right about some things. We've had our struggles, but that's what makes us strong. We fight for what's ours. We protect the things we care about, and we never give up. You'll see soon enough just how much we're capable of." Zyra was about to retort when a loud alarm blared through the room, cutting her off. She glanced at the screen on the wall, which was flashing red with a warning: "Hostile alien fleet detected in Earth's orbit." Her heart skipped a beat. This was not part of the plan. An attack from an alien faction. Earth wasn't prepared for this. The Galactic Council had warned of rogue species attempting to undermine its rule, but this was the first time Zyra had witnessed such an attack firsthand. Zyra stood up, her eyes narrowing as she prepared for action. She could already see the movements of the alien ships on the radar, large, heavily armed vessels that were clearly not from the Galactic Council. The humans around the table were panicking, scrambling to send out distress signals and mobilize their defenses. But Zyra could see the fear in their eyes. They were unprepared, no match for the forces now bearing down on them. "Don't worry," she said coolly, turning toward the military leaders. "I will handle this. You stay here and hide while I deal with the attackers." She moved swiftly to the communications room, where she would prepare for battle. The ship's cloaking device would make her nearly invisible to the attackers, and her advanced weaponry would easily overpower anything the humans could throw at them. She would show them just how hopeless their situation was. But as she stood there, adjusting the controls of her ship, she heard a voice over the intercom. "Captain Carter to Zyra. We need your help. We've launched a counterattack, but we're outmatched. We could use someone with your skills. Over." Zyra's lips curled into a smirk. It seemed that Alex was finally ready to see the reality of the situation. She would play along for now, but she had no doubt that the humans would fail once again. Minutes later, Zyra arrived at the battlefield, her ship cloaked in invisibility. She could already see the human fighters below, their ships launching into space in a futile attempt to stop the incoming alien fleet. Their ships were slow, outdated, and poorly equipped for such a confrontation. Zyra's superior weaponry would easily crush them. But as she observed the scene unfolding, something unexpected happened. The human fighters, despite their inferior technology, began to coordinate with surprising precision. Their attacks weren't random, and they weren't disorganized. Alex Carter's voice came through her communications system. "We're going to need more than your cloaking device if we're going to survive this. We have a plan. Follow our lead." Zyra's brow furrowed. The humans, led by Alex, had a plan. How could they possibly think they could win with such primitive technology? But as she followed the human ships into battle, Zyra's skepticism began to fade. The humans fought with an intensity she had never seen before. They moved with purpose, working as a unit. Their ships, though small and outdated, were maneuvered with such precision that they managed to strike the alien fleet's weak points, causing significant damage. For the first time, Zyra began to see something that she hadn't expected: human ingenuity. She activated her weapons, unleashing devastating energy blasts. But even as she fought, she couldn't ignore what was happening around her. The humans, against all odds, were not backing down. They were not the weak, fragile creatures she had thought them to be. They were strong in a way she couldn't yet understand. As the battle raged on, Zyra's arrogance began to crack. Could the humans really be this formidable? Could she have been wrong about them all along? The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: the story of humanity's strength was just beginning. And Zyra would soon find herself forced to face the truth about these tiny humans. The first wave of alien ships descended on Earth's atmosphere, their metallic hulls gleaming under the light of the distant sun. The humans had barely begun to respond when the enemy fleet opened fire, releasing a barrage of laser beams that cracked through the sky like thunder. The military base, once a symbol of human strength, was now a target, crumbling under the immense firepower of the invaders. In the midst of the chaos, Zyra hovered above in her cloaked ship, watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Nyrkan fleet was overwhelming, with ships the size of skyscrapers and weapons powerful enough to reduce cities to rubble. In contrast, the human fighters were small, outdated, and had neither the speed nor the firepower to match their alien foes. Zyra couldn't help but feel a surge of superiority as she watched the human ships attempt to defend their planet. She had no doubt that it would only be a matter of time before their resistance crumbled. But she was wrong. The humans weren't backing down, and something about their determination began to intrigue her. Captain Alex Carter's voice crackled through the communication system, steady and resolute, as if he had everything under control. "This isn't just about survival anymore. We're going to show them what Earth can do." Zira's ship glided smoothly through the chaotic battlefield, her advanced cloaking device making her nearly invisible to the enemy. She fired precise shots, targeting weak points in the enemy ships, causing explosions that rippled across the sky. With each blast, Zira's confidence grew. Her Nyrcan technology was far superior, and she was certain she could destroy these invaders in no time. But the humans, they were different. Despite their inferior ships and weapons, they moved with incredible precision. Their fighters, though far outmatched in terms of size and firepower, were coordinated in a way that Zira had not anticipated. It was like watching a well-oiled machine, each part working in perfect harmony. The human pilots followed orders without hesitation, weaving through the enemy fire, dodging attacks, and striking back with surprising accuracy. Alex's voice came through once again. "Zira, we need you to cover the western flank. We're about to make our move. Just trust us." Zira hesitated for a brief moment, her eyes narrowing as she studied the battlefield. She had been prepared to finish this battle on her own, to show the humans just how futile their resistance was. But Alex's words made her pause. There was something in his tone, something that suggested he knew what he was doing. She was not used to trusting others, especially not humans, but the battle had already turned more complicated than she'd expected. Reluctantly, Zira altered her course, her cloaked ship darting through the sky toward the western flank. As she approached, she saw the human strategy unfold before her eyes. A group of human fighters, now organized into a tight formation, began to push forward, their lasers piercing the alien ship's defenses. They weren't just defending. They were attacking, using the element of surprise and coordination to strike at the heart of the alien fleet. Zira fired off several shots, each blast destroying one of the alien vessels. The battle was raging, but she couldn't help but be impressed. The humans had been underestimated by her kind, and now they were showing their true strength. They were outnumbered, but they fought like lions. As the battle continued, the energy in the air grew thick with tension. Alien ships began to fall from the sky, their hulls torn apart by the humans' relentless attacks. Zira couldn't believe what she was witnessing. The humans were pushing back, not just defending their planet, but fighting with an intensity she had never seen before. She was forced to adapt, her strategic mind working quickly to keep up with the humans' unpredictable tactics. In the midst of the chaos, Zira spotted Alex again, his ship leading the charge, his movements flawless as he dodged enemy fire and unleashed devastating strikes. She watched in awe as his ship performed maneuvers that should have been impossible for such a small, outdated vessel. His skill as a pilot was unmatched, and with every successful strike, Zira's respect for him grew. But it wasn't just Alex. The humans, as a whole, were surprising her. Every time she thought they were about to break, they rallied together, their determination unwavering. It was as if they were fueled by something far greater than technology or tactics, a sheer will to survive, to protect their home. Zira's ship was now surrounded by the wreckage of destroyed alien ships. The battlefield had become a maze of twisted metal and fire. She could feel the pulse of the fight in her chest, the adrenaline surging through her veins. This was no longer just a battle. It was a test of strength, willpower, and resilience. And right now, it was the humans who were winning. "Zira, we've got a major breakthrough." Alex's voice came over the comms again. "We've located their command ship. We need to take it out before their reinforcements arrive." Zira's eyes narrowed. A command ship. That was the heart of the enemy fleet, the vessel controlling the entire operation. If it fell, the entire invasion could collapse. It was a risky move, but if anyone could pull it off, it was Alex and his team. Without hesitation, Zira engaged her ship's engines, speeding toward the command ship with deadly precision. As she neared, The enemy began to retaliate, launching waves of missiles and energy blasts in her direction. But Zira was quick, darting and weaving through the onslaught with ease, her ship's superior technology making her almost untouchable. The human fighters were right behind her, pushing forward, their weapons locked on the command ship. They followed her lead, forming a tight formation as they closed in on the target. The battlefield had shifted from chaos to a deadly dance of strategy and precision. The alien forces were on the defensive now, their once imposing fleet beginning to crumble under the humans' relentless pressure. The final moments of the battle were a blur. Zyra's ship launched a devastating series of energy blasts, aimed directly at the command ship's weak points. The explosion that followed was immense, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. For a moment, everything went silent. The command ship was gone, reduced to a cloud of debris and fire. As the dust settled, Zyra's heart pounded in her chest. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The alien fleet, now leaderless and disorganized, was retreating. The humans had done it. They had won. Zira hovered in the midst of the wreckage, her ship cloaked once more as she surveyed the aftermath. The humans had fought with a strength she had never expected. She had underestimated them. And now she had no choice but to respect them. And in that moment, as she watched the humans celebrate their victory, Zyra realized something she hadn't considered before. Earth was no longer the insignificant speck she had once thought it was. It was a world full of people who, despite their small size, had proven themselves to be a force to be reckoned with. And Alex Carter, the human she had once mocked, had just shown her that sometimes it's not about the size of the weapon, but the strength of the heart behind it. Zyra's ship floated silently in the remnants of the battlefield, its advanced cloaking technology keeping her hidden from both allies and enemies alike. The air was thick with the aftershocks of the battle, screams of victory mixed with the distant cries of those still fighting. Despite the chaos, a strange feeling gnawed at her chest, one she had never experienced before. Uncertainty. The humans had done something she hadn't believed possible. They had turned the tide of a battle that should have been their end, and Zira couldn't stop thinking about it. The Nyrkan fleet was in disarray, their command ship destroyed, and their remaining forces scattered. The humans had done more than just survive. They had fought with a determination that made Zira question everything she thought she knew about them. They weren't just a tiny species. They were resilient. They were clever. And they had just proven themselves more than capable of defeating an enemy much stronger than them. But even with their victory, Zyra knew this was far from over. The humans had won a battle, but the war was far from finished. There were still other Nyrkan fleets in orbit, and their commanders would not take this defeat lightly. The war was entering a new phase now, one where the humans would be forced to make choices they weren't ready for. Zira had seen it all before, the moment when a species wins a battle but is unprepared for the aftermath. And she had no doubt the humans would find themselves in a situation far worse than the one they had just survived. Her thoughts were interrupted as the communication link buzzed. Zyra. Alex's voice came through, steady and calm despite the chaos. We need you on the ground. The rest of the Nyrkan fleet is preparing for a counterattack. We can't fight them all from the sky. Zira's stomach tightened. She knew this was coming. The human forces had proven their worth in space, but on the ground, they would face an entirely different set of challenges. The Nyrkan ground forces were formidable, equipped with advanced weapons and technology far beyond what the humans could even dream of. The city below was about to become a war zone. I'm on my way, Zyra replied without hesitation, her voice now tinged with something unfamiliar, an emotion she couldn't quite place. She cloaked her ship again, slipping through the wreckage of the battlefield like a shadow, unseen by the human forces. Her ship was faster, more agile than anything the humans had, but this time it wasn't enough. The Nyrkan ground forces were already making their move, marching in unison toward the human defenses. Zira could see them from the sky. Large, imposing figures clad in thick armor, armed with weapons capable of wiping out entire battalions in seconds. Zyra's fingers tightened on the controls. She had never felt this kind of urgency before. The humans were brave, but they were not prepared for what was about to come. As she landed, the ground shook beneath her feet. She emerged from her cloaked ship, standing tall among the ruins of the city. Alex was there, along with a handful looking at her with a mixture of respect and wariness. She could sense their hesitation. She was an alien, and despite her help in the battle, they still saw her as the enemy. Alex stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "We're outnumbered, Zyra. If we're going to win this, we need to stick together." Zyra studied him for a moment. She had never trusted a human before, but something about Alex's words felt different. There was no arrogance in his voice, no false bravado. Just pure, raw determination, and it made her realize that, despite everything, she was willing to follow him. She nodded, her voice firm. "Then let's finish this." The battle on the ground was nothing like what Zyra had imagined. The Nyrcan forces were more than just soldiers. They were an unstoppable force, charging toward the humans with a ruthless efficiency. The humans fought back, but they were outmatched. Zyra watched as one soldier after another fell to the ground, their bodies torn apart by the advanced weaponry the Nyrcan possessed. The humans were out of their depth, but they fought on, their will to survive pushing them forward. Zyra was no longer the detached observer she had once been. She could feel the heat of the battle, the sounds of explosions echoing in her ears, the shouts of soldiers as they tried to hold their ground. She moved with precision, her weapons targeting the Nyrcan soldiers, taking them down one by one. But it wasn't enough. There were too many of them. As the battle raged on, Zyra found herself face to face with a Nyrcan commander, tall, imposing, his armor gleaming with the markings of his rank. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, everything went silent. He raised his weapon, aiming it directly at her. Without thinking, Zyra moved. She didn't wait for orders, didn't hesitate. She rushed at the commander, her speed a blur. She felt the pressure of the moment. If she didn't act now, the battle would be lost. She closed the distance in an instant, her sword slashing through the air with deadly accuracy. The commander's weapon clattered to the ground as his armor was torn apart by her attack. He fell to the ground, defeated. But Zyra didn't stop there. She moved from one enemy to the next, her strikes swift and decisive, her every action driven by the need to protect the humans who had earned her respect. But as the Nyrcan commander fell, another appeared, and then another. The human soldiers were exhausted, their numbers dwindling with every passing minute. Zyra could see the fear in their eyes as they realized that victory was slipping through their fingers. The ground was littered with the bodies of fallen comrades, and the Nyrcan forces were closing in on the final human stronghold. Alex's voice came through again, his tone grim. "Zyra, we need to retreat. There's no way we can win this. Not like this." Zyra hesitated. Retreat. It was a word she had never considered before, but as she looked around, she saw the truth in his words. The humans had fought valiantly, but they were on the verge of being overwhelmed. For the first time in her life, Zyra felt doubt. She had never considered the possibility of failure, but now, as the enemy closed in, she realized that the humans were facing their moment of truth. If they didn't retreat, they would all die here. "I won't leave you," she said, her voice filled with resolve. She had never truly cared for the humans before, but now, standing side by side with them, something inside her had changed. They weren't just a tiny species, they were worth fighting for. Alex looked at her, his face showing both relief and sadness. "We'll fight till the end, but we'll fight together." Zyra turned to face the advancing Nyrcan forces, her mind racing. There had to be another way, a way to turn the tide once again. And then it hit her. In the distance, she saw it, the main power generator, hidden beneath layers of concrete and metal. If she could destroy it, The Nyrcan would lose their power supply, and their forces would be crippled. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance they had. Without another word, Zira sprinted toward the generator, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear Alex's voice in her ear, urging her on. "You can do this, Zira. We're with you." With every step she took, she could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it, the moment of truth. Would she make it in time? Would the humans survive? She reached the generator, her pulse racing. There was no time to hesitate. She activated the detonator, and the world around her erupted in a brilliant flash of light. The Nyrcan forces staggered, their technology failing them as the power was cut off. And in that moment, the humans fought back with everything they had. Zira smiled grimly, knowing that they had just won their chance at survival. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the humans had the upper hand. The dust settled around Zira as she stood among the wreckage of the Nyrcan forces, her heart pounding from the explosion. The once mighty enemy fleet was now just a memory, the remains scattered across the battlefield. But the humans weren't out of danger yet. The battle on the ground had only just begun, and there were still countless Nyrcan forces moving toward the city. The stakes had never been higher. Alex was by her side, breathing heavily but still standing tall. His face was marked by exhaustion, but his eyes burned with determination. He had led his soldiers through the chaos, guiding them with the skill of a seasoned warrior. Yet even he knew that the fight was far from over. Zira could see it in his expression. There was a grim acceptance in his gaze, a realization that they had only managed to survive this long by sheer willpower. And as much as she admired that strength, she knew the humans would not last much longer against the relentless force of the Nyrcan. But Zira had a plan. She didn't know if it would work, but she had no choice but to try. If she could get them to form an alliance with the humans who still remained hidden deep in their cities, they might have a chance to tip the scales in their favor. The key to their survival lay in unity, something neither side had ever considered possible. The only problem: the Nyrcan's second-in-command, General Korin, had already deployed another wave of troops to capture the human leaders. His forces were advancing rapidly, and Zira knew if they didn't act quickly, Alex and his team would be overwhelmed. "We need to stop Korin's reinforcements," Zira said to Alex, her voice low but filled with certainty. "If we can destroy their supply line, we can cripple their forces." Alex nodded, already formulating a plan. "We'll need to move fast, and we'll need to work together. This is more than just a fight for survival now. This is about taking down an empire." Zira's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. She hadn't expected to find herself working so closely with the humans. She had spent her entire life in a world where alliances were formed based on power and necessity. But here, with Alex and his soldiers, it felt different. They weren't fighting for power. They were fighting for each other, for survival, and that made all the difference. As they moved through the ruined city, the sound of explosions and distant gunfire echoed in the background. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and debris. Zira's sharp senses detected the movement of enemy troops in the distance. The Nyrcan forces were relentless, and time was running out. "We need to find a way to stop them before they reach our position," Alex said, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Can you hack into their systems? Disable their communication lines?" Zira nodded. "I can do that, but it will take time. The Nyrcan systems are highly advanced, but I've hacked into similar tech before. I'll need your help to buy me some time." Alex didn't hesitate. "We'll cover you. Just get us through this." As Zira began working to override the Nyrcan communication network, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of camaraderie with the humans. She had never thought she would find herself in this situation, standing side by side with a group of people she had once considered weak and insignificant. Yet here she was, relying on them just as much as they were relying on her. The first few moments of silence were intense. The Nyrcan troops were closing in on their position, and it was clear that if Zara couldn't disable their communications, the human resistance would be crushed. Alex and his team were preparing for their final stand, their weapons raised and ready for battle. Almost there, Zara muttered, her fingers dancing over the controls of her wrist pad as she hacked into the Nirkan's main server. She could feel the pressure mounting, every second a battle of its own. If she failed, they would all die here. Suddenly, a loud blast echoed in the distance, followed by a series of smaller explosions. The sound of Nirkan warships began to grow louder, their heavy engines reverberating through the atmosphere. Zara looked up, panic rising in her chest as she saw the ships descending toward their position. "We don't have much time," she shouted. "Get ready." With a determined nod, Alex and his soldiers prepared for the fight of their lives. Zara knew this would be their final chance to stop Corin's forces from overwhelming them. They had to strike now, or all hope would be lost. "I'm in," Zara said, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "Their communication grid is offline. We've bought ourselves some time." Alex grinned, the relief on his face almost palpable. "Now we take them down. Together." The battle that followed was brutal. The Nirkan were formidable, their advanced technology and combat skills unmatched by anything the humans had faced before. But the humans fought with everything they had, fighting not just for survival, but for each other. Zara fought alongside them, her alien technology cutting through the enemy ranks with ease. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that the Nirkan were regrouping. Corin wasn't done yet. His forces were relentless, and despite their best efforts, Zara knew the humans wouldn't be able to hold their ground for long. The city was falling, and the battle was quickly turning against them. Just as the Nirkan were about to launch a devastating counterattack, a loud rumble filled the air, followed by a series of piercing alarms. Zara's heart skipped a beat as she turned to Alex. "What's happening?" she demanded. Alex's expression was grim. "The Nirkan are deploying their most powerful weapon. Their orbital bombardment is coming down on us." Zara's mind raced. The humans didn't have the technology to stop an orbital strike, but she did. She had seen it before, and she knew what she had to do. "I can intercept it," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But I'll need cover. Get your people to safety. Now." Alex didn't hesitate. "We're with you, Zara. No one gets left behind." The human soldiers formed a protective line, covering Zara as she rushed to the city's central communications tower. From there, she would be able to tap into the Nirkan's orbital network and reroute the incoming bombardment. It was risky, but it was the only chance they had. As Zara worked to hack into the system, the ground beneath her shook violently. She could hear the hum of the Nirkan warships overhead, the sound of their weapons charging for the final blow. But Zara was determined. She focused all her energy on the task at hand, her hands flying over the controls as she initiated the emergency override. "Almost there," she muttered under her breath. Just as the first wave of bombs was released, Zara finally managed to reroute the energy flow. A surge of power shot through the system, and the bombardment stopped. The sky above them cleared, the ships retreating as the humans had a moment of victory. Zara stood, breathing heavily, her body trembling from the strain. She had done it. The humans had won, for now. Alex approached her, his face covered in dirt and sweat, but his eyes shining with gratitude. "You did it. You saved us." Zara nodded, feeling something deep within her stir. She had never felt such a connection to another species before. She had come to respect the humans, not just for their bravery, but for their heart, their unwavering will to fight and survive. "You saved yourselves," Zara said, her voice soft but filled with pride. "I just helped you along the way." As the humans gathered around her, Zara realized something profound. This was more than an alliance. It was the beginning of something far greater. The humans, who she had once underestimated, had shown her the true meaning of strength. And for the first time in her life, Zyra felt she had found a place where she truly belonged. The sun was setting behind the horizon, casting a reddish hue over the battlefield. The air was thick with the smell of burning wreckage, and the sounds of distant explosions echoed across the landscape. After all the chaos and bloodshed, there was one final challenge ahead, one final chance to end the war and secure the future for the humans and their allies. The Nyrcan forces, though weakened, were not yet defeated. Their most powerful weapon, General Corrin, had not yet shown his hand. Zyra knew the next few hours would decide the fate of both worlds. The human soldiers had already dug in, preparing for the worst. They had fought tirelessly, driven by the hope that they could outlast their enemies. But they were outnumbered, exhausted, and wounded. The Nyrcan had brought reinforcements, and now they were pushing forward, determined to crush the humans once and for all. Zyra stood beside Alex, her eyes scanning the distant hills where the Nyrcan's forces were amassing. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a battle for everything. She had seen the humans fight with more courage and heart than she ever thought possible. But now they needed more than that. They needed a victory. "We're out of time," Alex said, his voice steady but filled with an edge of urgency. "The Nyrcan are closing in. We've lost contact with the backup units, and our supplies are running low." Zyra nodded, her mind racing. She had spent her life calculating risks, planning strategies, but even she knew that this was a moment where strategy alone wouldn't be enough. The humans would need to dig deep into their spirit, their will to survive, to make it through the coming storm. "I've been thinking," Zyra said quietly, her voice almost lost in the wind. "The Nyrcan have an energy core. It's the heart of their fleet's power. If we can destroy it, we can take down their entire army. But the core is heavily guarded." Alex's gaze sharpened. "How do you know this?" "I was part of their fleet before," Zyra replied. "I know their weaknesses. And this core, it's a vulnerable point. If we hit it, we'll bring their whole operation crashing down." Alex looked around at his soldiers, who were gearing up for the final assault. The weight of Zyra's words hung heavy in the air. If they could take out the core, it would mean the end of the Nyrcan's dominance. But getting there was another matter entirely. The enemy's defenses were impenetrable, and they would have to fight through dozens of Nyrcan soldiers just to reach it. "I'll take the lead," Alex said, his voice firm, filled with the kind of confidence that only someone who had led his men through the worst could possess. "But I won't do it alone. I'll need you and your people to cover us." Zyra didn't hesitate. "I'm with you, Alex. Let's end this." The plan was set. Alex and his most trusted soldiers would make their way to the Nyrcan base, fighting their way through the enemy's lines to reach the core. Zyra, along with the remaining human forces, would provide cover, distracting the Nyrcan and drawing their attention away from the assault team. It was a risky plan, but it was the only one they had. As they made their final preparations, the atmosphere grew tense. There was a palpable sense of anticipation, as if the entire world was holding its breath. This was it, the final stand. "Remember," Alex said to his soldiers as they gathered around, "we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who's ever been oppressed by the Nyrcan. We're fighting for the future." The humans rallied behind him, their faces grim but resolute. They knew what was at stake. There was no turning back now. The assault began at dawn. The Nyrcan were caught off guard, and the humans managed to push through their defenses with surprising speed. The Nyrcan soldiers fought back fiercely, but the humans were relentless. They had fought for so long, endured so much, that the thought of losing was unimaginable. Each step forward was a victory, each fallen enemy a symbol of their resistance. Zyra fought with a fierceness that surprised even herself. She had once believed the Nyrcan to be invincible, their technology unbeatable. But now, as she fought alongside the humans, she saw how wrong she had been. The humans were more than just a race of tiny, insignificant creatures. They were powerful in ways that the Nyrcan couldn't comprehend. Their resilience, Their unity and their refusal to give up made them stronger than any advanced technology or military strategy. As the battle raged on, Alex and his team managed to break through the Nirkin's outer defenses. The path to the core was clear, but they still had to face Korin himself, the general who had orchestrated the invasion. Korin's voice echoed through the battlefield, amplified by his advanced communication systems. "You will fall before me, humans. You are nothing more than pests, destined to be crushed under the weight of my empire." Alex gritted his teeth, determined to prove Korin wrong. "We're not your pests, Korin. We're your nightmare." The final confrontation was imminent. Korin and his elite soldiers stood between Alex's team and the energy core. The tension in the air was palpable, every moment stretching into an eternity as the two sides prepared for the decisive battle. Zira had a feeling deep in her chest that this would be the moment that would change everything. She had seen what the humans were capable of, and she knew they could win, but it would take everything they had, and then some. The first shots were fired, and the battlefield erupted into chaos once again. Alex and his soldiers pushed forward, fighting their way through the Nirkin's elite troops with a fury that was unmatched. The Nirkin fought back with everything they had, but they were no match for the humans' sheer determination. Zira, seeing the battle unfold before her, felt a rush of emotion. The humans had come so far. They had endured so much. This was their moment. As Alex neared Korin's position, the Nirkin general raised his weapon, aiming it directly at him. "You will not defeat me, human," Korin sneered. But Alex wasn't afraid. He had faced worse and survived. With a roar, he charged forward, his weapon raised and ready. The final showdown had begun. The clash between the two was intense. Korin's strength and technology were formidable, but Alex's courage and heart gave him the edge. They fought fiercely, each strike bringing them closer to the end of this war. Finally, with one last powerful strike, Alex drove his blade into Korin's chest. The general let out a roar of pain as he fell, defeated at last. The Nirkin forces, witnessing their leader's fall, began to retreat. The humans had won. Against all odds, they had defeated the Nirkin. As the smoke cleared and the battlefield fell silent, Zira stood alongside Alex, both of them battered and bloody but alive. They had done it. They had won. The Nirkin Empire had been shattered, and humanity had triumphed. In that moment, Zira realized just how much she had changed. She had come to see the humans not as weak, fragile beings, but as the true inheritors of the galaxy. They had proven themselves in ways she never thought possible, and she would forever be grateful to them for it. "Thank you," Zira said quietly to Alex. "Without you, this wouldn't have been possible." Alex smiled, a tired but contented smile. "We did it together." And in that moment, with the Nirkin defeated and the future uncertain, Zira knew one thing for sure. The humans had won their place in the universe, and nothing could ever take that away from them. The battle had ended. The last echoes of gunfire faded away, leaving a heavy silence that seemed to envelop the entire battlefield. Smoke and dust hung in the air, swirling in the light of the setting sun. The Nirkin forces had retreated, defeated, their pride shattered. The humans, battered and exhausted, stood victorious. But the cost had been great. Alex's team had lost several good men during the battle. The death of Bonner, the quiet, reliable soldier who had been with him from the beginning, weighed heavily on Alex's heart. They had all fought so hard, so selflessly, but now it was hard to escape the fact that for all their victories, they had lost comrades along the way. Zira stood beside him, her eyes scanning the battlefield. She had fought hard, alongside the humans, and seen them through to the end. Her thoughts, however, were with the soldiers who had made the ultimate sacrifice, just as Alex's were. She had learned so much about humanity through this fight, about their strength, their resilience, their capacity for love and loyalty. She had never known beings like them existed, and now she found herself mourning alongside them. Alex, she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. We won. But at what cost? Alex didn't immediately answer. Instead, he looked down at the ground, his eyes lingering on the fallen soldiers, the ones who would never see the peace they had fought so desperately for. Bonner's lifeless body lay nearby, and the sight of it brought a lump to his throat. He had been a good man, a loyal soldier. I know, Alex replied finally, but we couldn't have done it without them, without all of them. Zira nodded, her gaze softening as she looked at him. She had seen the humans' determination, their ability to keep going even when faced with the harshest of odds. They fought for each other. They fought for their homes, their families, their loved ones, and they fought for a future that they could shape without the Narracans standing in their way. Bonner, Zira said, almost as if talking to herself. He was a warrior, a hero. He died so others could live. He won't be forgotten. Alex looked up at her, his eyes dark with sorrow. None of them will be forgotten. Every single person who fought, whether they made it out or not, is part of this victory. They're heroes. Zira placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him the same comfort she had received from him during their darkest moments. He needed her strength now, as much as he had given it to her during their struggles. Together, they had endured the hardest of trials, and together, they would bear the emotional weight of their losses. The Narracan are gone, Zira said, her voice steady. Their empire is shattered. This victory means something, Alex. It means freedom for so many. Alex's eyes grew distant, and for a moment, he looked lost in thought. His mind raced back to the days before the war, to the peace they had once known. The world he knew was gone now. The world he had fought to protect had changed forever. But there was one thing he knew for sure. It was worth it. Every sacrifice, every death, every battle had led them here, to a new beginning. We did it, Alex whispered, almost as if trying to convince himself. We actually did it. Zira stood beside him, her expression somber but filled with gratitude. She had once mocked humanity, calling them weak, insignificant. But now, after everything she had witnessed, their strength, their resilience, their love for one another, she realized how wrong she had been. They were not weak. They were powerful in ways that no one could ever have predicted. She turned to him, her voice trembling with emotion. I never thought I'd see this day. But here we are, together. Alex looked at her, his gaze softening. I couldn't have done it without you, Zira. You were part of this. You helped us when we needed it most. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. There was still much work to be done. The Narracan had been defeated, but their influence lingered in the galaxy. It would take time to rebuild, to heal, to ensure that peace would last. But that was a challenge they would face together. Zira glanced at the horizon, her mind already planning the future. There was no going back now. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity had secured its place in it. They had proven their worth, not just as survivors, but as champions. They had shown the universe what they were capable of, and the universe would never forget. But even as she looked to the future, she couldn't ignore the emptiness in her chest. So many lives had been lost, so many loved ones left behind. And yet there was a sense of peace in her heart as well. They had done it. They had saved the galaxy, not just for themselves, but for everyone who came after them. Alex turned to face her, his eyes locking with hers. Zira, what happens now? Zira hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. They had both come so far, and yet so much remained unknown. But one thing was certain. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. We rebuild, she said finally, her voice filled with determination. We rebuild, and we honor those who gave everything for this moment. And we make sure the Narracan never return. Alex nodded, a quiet determination in his eyes. He had lost so much, but he had gained something invaluable as well, the respect of an alien world and a new ally in Zira. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Together, they had changed the course of history. The sun set lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the battlefield. The once dominant Nyrcan Empire was now a distant memory. Humanity had proven its strength, its will to survive, and its capacity for love and loyalty. The galaxy would never be the same again. As the humans and their allies began to gather the remains of their fallen comrades, Zara walked beside Alex, her heart heavy with both sorrow and hope. She had once believed that humanity was nothing more than a fleeting existence, easily crushed under the weight of a superior race. But now, she knew the truth. They were more than just survivors. They were warriors, protectors, and heroes in their own right. And as the stars began to twinkle above, Zyra made a silent promise to herself. She would never forget what the humans had taught her. They had shown her the power of determination, the strength of unity, and the unbreakable will to fight for what mattered most. Alex turned to her, his eyes soft but filled with resolve. "We'll never stop fighting, Zyra. Not for the ones we lost. Not for the future we promised them." And in that moment, Zyra knew that she had found something she had never expected. A new purpose, a new family, and a new hope for the future. Together, they would face whatever came next, and together, they would build a future worth fighting for. The battle had been won. The war had been ended. But the story of humanity, of Alex and Zyra, was just beginning. And in the vastness of space, amid the stars and the endless possibilities, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, side by side.